What's up, guys? I'm sure you've heard by now that Western Australia has come out and banned gel blasters completely. Pretty sad day for gel ball in Western Australia. They've put out a press conference where they kind of explain their reasoning for that. Just wanted to watch through that and give my thoughts on some of their points.
Good afternoon, thanks very much.
I'll just first explain, this guy in the suit is their police minister.
Great.
And the guy next to him is the police
Thanks very
commissioner.
much. We're here this afternoon to announce that from the 3rd of July, gel blasters will be a prohibited weapon in Western Australia. So essentially, we are banning gel blasters from the 3rd of July. There will be an amnesty, so people who are in possession of gel blasters will be able to return them without any penalty to any police station. And I would urge anyone in possession of a gel blaster in Western Australia to go straight to the police station with that gel blaster and return it. You'll be okay, there's no penalty.
So you've got less than a month to have probably at least 100,000 gel blasters handed into your local police station. Here in South Australia, we had a 6-month amnesty and we only got probably about 5% of the total handed in.
You'll be okay, there's no penalties. Post 3rd of July, if anyone has a gel blaster, then they'll be subject to some serious penalties and they could be charged. Essentially, what we're doing is responding to a plea.
At no point in this video does he mention what the charges are, but if you're found with one after July 3rd, you can face $36,000 in fines or 3 years in prison.
Is responding to a police request. These things weren't available in Australia until about 2017. They were prohibited from being imported. Things changed at that time and they're now coming in through Queensland and then being distributed across the country. Gel blasters look like firearms. It is dangerous. In the event that a police officer is responding to a call out, they will be assuming that someone is in possession of a firearm. We live in the environment, a post-terrorism world where all police officers are ready to respond to active shooter incidents, but
we live in a post-terrorist world. We also live in Australia that has the most draconian laws on real firearms in the world. The only people in Australia with real M4s are our police force. If you're responding to a group of teenagers misusing gel blasters out in a public park or something where they shouldn't have them, you cannot assume that they have real M4s unless you've got some missing from your police department.
Active shooter incidents, but when they come across someone carrying a gel blaster, they will be either incapable or hard pressed to be able to determine whether or not that's a real firearm. A tragedy is just waiting to happen with these things. I don't want Western Australian police officers to be put into the position where they arrive on a scene having been called out by a concerned member of the public and are
So it's the Karens to blame.
Unable to determine whether they're confronting a real firearm or not. We're going to ban them so that at the very least in Western Australia you won't have to confront someone legally or otherwise possessing a gel blaster and creating concern in the public. We have also witnessed around the country, since they've become prevalent around the country, we've witnessed interest from criminals. These things clearly can be used as a fake weapon. And
interest from criminals, eh? Well, what's more likely? A criminal is going to buy a $200 gel blaster, wait a week for it to arrive, and then go and commit their crime with the gel blaster. Say that's a robbery. The average amount of money that you would get from robbing someone is less than the cost of the gel blaster. Completely bad investment, and I don't see why any criminal would choose to use a gel blaster when they could easily go down to Kmart and buy a $5 kitchen knife, which is actually lethal, mind you.
To intimidate people and make them believe that someone's got a real weapon and threatening. Additionally, we are aware that many of the components of gel blasters are interchangeable with other parts and can be ultimately converted to a real firearm.
What?
So they have that risk as well.
Gel blasters cannot be converted to be real firearms. The guy in the suit, your police minister, is ex-military. He should know this. He's blatantly lying to the cameras. The only part that I can think of from a gel blaster that's compatible with a real firearm would be the buttstock. And there are Nerf guns that use the same style of buttstock. If there somehow was a way that you could put the internals of a real gun inside of a gel blaster and then fire it, the gel blaster itself is not designed to withstand those kinds of pressures and would just simply explode in the user's hands like a hand grenade.
Would represent an alternative means of getting a firearm. Ultimately, we've also witnessed between the year, for the first year from 2017 to the end of 2018, when gel blasters became available via Queensland, there were some 500 high-level police responses right across the nation.
500 high-level police responses across the entirety of Australia, and not a single fatality.
The nation. That's a response by units like the Tactical Response Group or Regional Operations Group, people who are highly trained and prepared to respond to terrorist incidents are being called out, diverted from their real tasks, from their operational response role to what it ends up being a false call out, but could really very easily
So he's just admitted to them all being false call-outs where people are misusing them in the wrong place, playing skirmish games in a public park or something stupid like that. They're not actually being used by criminals.
Very easily result in a fatality. It is a far too dangerous situation to tolerate any longer, and we won't here in Western Australia. Last year in Western Australia alone, there were 147 police call-outs to gel blaster related incidents.
147 call-outs in Western Australia last year. I would love to know the statistics of how many criminals were convicted for using one, but they're not going to tell you that because that doesn't work with their argument. Let me grab some crime statistics for Western Australia last year. So in the same year as these 147 call-outs to gel blaster false incidents, there were 33,592 assault charges where people actually were injured. There were 6,460 threatening behaviour charges, and there were 1,457 actual robberies person to person with violence or threats of violence, compared to 147 gel blaster incidents where the majority were no crimes at all.
Beyond all of that, there have been incidents here in Western Australia and around the country of people in possession of gel blasters actively shooting other people in the streets with the pellets that these things fire.
Yeah, that's a dick move. That brings bad attention to the hobby as a whole, and those people are idiots. On the plus side though, a gel blaster cannot kill someone. The worst it can do is some eye damage if they're not wearing any glasses or anything.
These things fire, so they do represent a threat in that regard as well. I'm happy to take questions, but before I do, I might ask the Commissioner to pick up what is a real M4, and I'll hold up the gel blaster and see if you guys, we'll move over here so you can have a look at it. You can imagine a police officer responding to a call-out is going to have a lot of difficulty identifying whether or not this is one of those and whether or not it represents a lethal threat to them.
I don't know, you'll have to check whether any of your M4s have gone missing, seeing as you're the only ones with them. Also, if it's some kid out in a park, they're probably not going to have a real M4.
That's essentially the problem we confront, and that's the problem we're dealing with. The gel blasters are intentionally designed to look like real firearms.
Yeah, the appearance can be argued as a bad thing, but it's also why the sport's so popular. If they looked like a Nerf blaster, there would be hardly anyone using them, because Nerf blasters shoot further. People want to use what they've been playing with in COD, in the real world, and get some exercise.
Okay. Anyone got any questions at all?
Is there no legislative change required?
No, it's regulation.
Right.
So it still needs to go to the Governor and Executive Council, so that's why I anticipate the 3rd of July, subject to any issues along the line in...
So this hasn't actually passed into law yet. So I definitely recommend getting on your emails to politicians and trying to stop this.
The line in administratively, but should be enforced from the 3rd of July.
It's a very quick turnaround.
Yes,
so
well...
not much time for consultation with the groups.
Oh, yeah, there's consultation in that I met with the advocates for gel blasters last week, I told them I intended banning them. I also indicated to them the reasons, and they conceded all of the arguments that I made, that they look like firearms, that there is a danger that someone could be shot by police as a result of that confusion that could arise, that they are attractive to criminals.
Yeah, it's possible someone could be shot by police. They could also be shot by police holding a potato. What ifs is not a good basis to make laws on.
And that essentially there's evidence of many call-outs of a high-level police response as a consequence of these things being on the streets.
How many are in WA and how attractive do you think?
I don't know. See, that's the thing. I have no idea. These things are imported via Queensland and they're sold in the markets. So people are buying them. Doubtless people are buying them online. You can buy them on Gumtree.
If they're anywhere near as popular in WA as they are here in SA, I'd expect at least 150,000 out there.
They're out there. I just say don't buy them because you'll be breaking the law from the 3rd of July, and if you're caught in possession of one of these things, you'll be subject to some very severe penalties.
Is this a total ban, Minister, or can businesses who run fields with, battlefields, can they still run?
Right now, they'll be a prohibited weapon from the 3rd of July, so no, they cannot be used for anything. I have indicated to those advocates that we're going to do some amendments to the Firearms Act. There'll be an immediate one, and there might be one a little later than the first one we're working on right now, which.
Okay, so banning them completely outright and forcing everyone to hand them in immediately, and then later down the track we might make them okay. So after you've already handed them all in, now look, you can buy them again. Lovely.
Which may accommodate further consultation and perhaps them being able to make the argument for that sort of thing. But right now, no, they won't be legal in any way.
So businesses will be put out.
There is no business that I'm aware of.
There is.
There's no businesses that run jail ball skirmishes in WA. I think there's at least 5 to 10 of them. I've seen plenty of people playing with them online, and there's definitely a community out there doing it.
One in Bellevue, they run 6 to 10 every night.
Is that a business or a club?
It's a business.
Business.
They hold functions at schools and the like.
Yeah, well, they're not going to be able to.
But your government is all about creating jobs for West Australians, and you're going to take some people out of jobs. How do you feel about that?
Look, there's a real shortage of people in Western Australia at the moment. I think the mining industry is indicating that they've got about 40,000 people that they'll be requiring in the near term. But that aside, this is...
So if you can't sell gel blasters anymore, he's saying you should go join the mines.
This is about saving people's lives. It's about making sure that police officers do not have to confront the situation we just demonstrated, arriving at a site where there's been a call out and an individual is in possession of what looks like a dangerous weapon.
But is not a dangerous weapon because this is Australia.
I'm going to make sure that that is not possible under the law.
It's already not possible.
Are lives really at risk though? I mean, highly trained police, when they're called out to a situation like that, usually challenge the person to put down their weapon, and the way the person behaves indicates the risk level more than the appearance of the weapon.
Look, I've done close quarters battle and I've been trained to confront those sorts of situations. You do not want to have police confronting unnecessarily a situation where someone who is in possession of what looks like a firearm is potentially threatening the police officer, and then having the police officer, in a matter of seconds often, having to make a decision which results in a life or death for that person. It's not necessary.
Police officer, that's very different, and that is illegal.
Every general duties police officer is in possession of a firearm, and they are trained and asked to respond to active shooter situations. Right now, we're in a...
Yeah, but they're not trained to shoot first and ask questions later. With someone holding a gel blaster, as soon as you point your real gun at them, they're going to put it down.
Post 9/11 world where the environment is different. You do not expect, and we don't ask police officers to sit benignely aside when there's an active shooter situation. When you get a report...
We've had 0 active shootings in Australia since the actual real firearm ban in the 90s after the Port Arthur massacre.
Do you want me to finish? When you get a report, a call from the public You don't know whether it's an active shooter. You don't know whether it's a serious threat. All you know is someone's in possession of a firearm.
But isn't that
That is exactly the same response as though they were in possession of a firearm. You don't want someone walking around the streets with one of these things. And they have been walking around the streets. They've been seen walking around the bush, actively moving around
Shooting each other for a bunch of fun.
the community where it's the community who are reporting these things.
yes?
They're rightly reporting someone in possession of what looks like to be being a firearm.
But couldn't be a real firearm because we're in Australia.
But then isn't how the piece is used as opposed to what the equipment is more important in the eyes of police when they're assessing that risk?
Or, you know, maybe afterwards, after the person's been shot, that might be the case. That
147 call-outs, no shots.
for the purposes of the court, looking into what happened and why, and whether or not that was justified,
WA police,
but
in my experience, don't shoot first. They're not trigger.
that is not the point. The point is you don't want the police to have to confront a person in possession of what looks like a dangerous firearm
Can't
unnecessarily.
qualifications make them distinguishable from
No,
firearms?
unfortunately, the thing about these is the componentry that results in the projectile being fired is concealed inside these things. They want them to look like this, and you can conceal them inside the outer casing at any time. So that's why we're banning them.
There are some on the market though that are distinguishable. They have the orange tips or coloration to distinguish them from actual firearms.
Doesn't
Are
actually-
they still legal?
What, gel blasters?
Yes.
No.
He doesn't even know that there are colourful ones or ones that don't look like real guns.
Gel blasters of any description will be illegal.
So why, if some of them don't look like?
Because you pull out a can of paint and you paint the orange thing black and it looks like a firearm.
But that's the,
Could also paint a real firearm to look like a Nerf gun.
but that's the same as BB guns.
No,
Paintball guns.
it's with respect, it's not. A BB gun doesn't look like an M4
Why aren't you giving gel blaster owners the chance to register them as a firearm?
because you can't. These things, they don't have registered numbers. They're not capable of having a serial number engraved on them by the manufacturer.
We're already serialising gel blasters ourselves here in South Australia. We have been since October last year. Our police provide a serial number. It's up to the gun dealer to engrave that on there before we can take it home.
A serial number engraved on them by the manufacturer, and so they're not like a firearm. They're not. I understand.
Correct, they're not like a firearm.
Not really all across the paintball guns, but I understand they have serial numbers and they're controlled by the businesses themselves. What's happening with these is that if there is a business, the business isn't the only one in possession of the firearms. They're all over the community and people are carrying them around. They might be going there to use them. Perhaps at that site they have their own and they rent them out, I don't know. But what I do know is there's clubs and people who want to have them in the community, and we're saying they can't at the moment.
Can that be part of the negotiations though?
I've said there'll be a consultation around the next firearms amendment. Doesn't mean that they'll be enabled or allowed, but we'll consult around it.
When we spoke to the businesses this morning, they were saying that it is in a controlled environment, yet they run from 6 until 10. It does help people with autism, even returning soldiers with PTSD. I mean, is this a case of a bad few warning for the rest of them, or what would you say to those concerns?
I would say that in the first year they became available in Australia, across the country, there were 500 call-outs by units like the TRG to gel blaster related incidents in the community.
500 sounds like a large number, but considering the number of gel blasters in the whole country are probably up around 1 million, that is insignificant compared to the total number of users.
There were 147 in Western Australia last year. It's not acceptable.
It's part of your job, mate.
Letting those groups where it's a controlled environment continue to run. There's no consultation for that to be allowed.
No, because it's totally uncontrolled at the moment. They're coming in via Queensland, but they're being distributed everywhere and people are buying them without any control at all. And it's not something that we can control with respect to the supply from Queensland other than outlawing.
Some of the viewers who's watching this live right now have just would like to ask, saying that, you know, have WA police have actually shot anyone who's carrying a gel blaster? They believe that the argument is flawed.
Yeah, well, I disagree.
Were there any examples of people who shot?
I disagree. I do not want a police officer to confront the situation where they arrive following a call out to see somebody in possession of what looks like a firearm and have to make that decision.
They've already made the decision 147 times, and the decision is not to shoot.
We're avoiding that situation by passing this law or regulation.
Granted, it was more around, I believe, airsoft firearms, but 2016, the Law Reform Commission did a review of WA firearms legislation and recommended against appearance-based legislation. How's this different?
Yeah, you're right. It's related to airsoft. This is gel blasters.
But what's more dangerous about a gel blaster compared to an airsoft?
It's absolutely appearance. That is the primary driver here with respect to
So airsoft don't look like real guns, guys.
my concerns initially, but also there is interchangeable componentry that can turn them into a real firearm. So they become an illegitimate means of gathering a...
So something about the gel blaster can convert it to a real gun, but an airsoft cannot.
or getting a firearm.
But that's already illegal. Modifying them to make them firearms is already illegal.
There's nothing stopping people having these and then ordering in components that they can then use for the purposes of...
Yeah, there is. It's called manufacturing an illegal firearm. And ordering in those components, our border force should be able to stop those coming in if they even exist. I don't know of anything that could go in a gel blaster to make it a real gun.
turning it into a firearm.
Why not just regulate the appearance so that they have to look different, so they haven't that orange...
Well, that's something... Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. So in Victoria, there's a regulation... they provide description, visual description of alternatives, and there are a couple that look like, alien space guns or something like, or more like a water pistol than a firearm. That's something that we can consider with the amendment to the Firearms Act in due course.
So down the track, you might be allowed to have a gel storm or something less realistic if it goes through their changes. Keeping in mind that by his logic, those can be converted to be real guns.
It's not what attracts them to using these things.
So why not consider that before banning it and putting someone out of business?
Well, right now, my concern is for the police officers and the safety of the community more than anything else.
Commissioner, can we ask you from a police perspective?
Sure.
What do your police officers say in terms of when they're potentially confronted by a gel blaster?
Look, we're dealing with reality here, not hypotheticals. I'll give you two examples. In April this year, a man had siege of a pharmacy at Applecross. Police Tactical Response Group followed the General Duty's initial attendance. That took hours and hours before that man was disarmed. He had a gel blaster, that's what we allege, and that was of grave public concern. I wouldn't have had the TRG there for hours on end until we had to apprehend him.
Would have been of more public concern if you had something that could actually kill someone, like a knife.
In December last year, and we'll release vision of this, in December last year police were called where 6 male persons were carrying around weapons like this. They were apprehended at gunpoint by police. I've seen the vision, and you'll shortly see the vision. The police had to and appropriately took response, armed with our long-arm weapons, AR-15s, and with their ballistic helmets and vests, because we had no concept that they were not real firearms.
So you did your job. Some guys were playing with these out in public where they shouldn't be. You showed up with your real AR-15s or M4s, whatever you've got, and no one was shot.
I echo what the Minister said. This is not about hypotheticals, and I know there are questions about one particular business. This is about saving people's lives.
That shows how little research they did on this topic if they think there's only one business in the whole of Western Australia that deals with gel blasters.
There are real incidents that do occur where armed police are going to be putting not only themselves but other members of the community, perhaps innocent people, who may be in possession of these types of weapons.
If someone's possessing a gel blaster out in public, are they really innocent at that point?
So I applaud the Minister and the government for taking this step. It was a recommendation I put forward because we want to make sure the community is kept safe. I might just add one more comment. We all know that there have been paintball guns operating for many years. They have been regulated, and you can see a plastic bucket on top of it. They're quite clearly not got the appearance of a real weapon.
Guess he's never heard of mag-fed paintball markers.
Now, on this table in front of you are both authentic weapons and the gel blaster weapons. I defy anyone to quickly look at that and tell me which is which. They're both authentic and non-authentic weapons.
Well, it depends who's holding it, doesn't it?
Don't expect a police officer running around under duress in an armed offender situation, whether in the day, whether in the night, and expect them to make a split-second decision. I'm not going to require my officers to do it, and I applaud the government for taking this strong stance. It's necessary.
Seeing as the only ones who would have real M4s out in the dark of night would be your fellow officers, I think if you're considering shooting someone, you have bigger issues.
The incident you mentioned that I believe that everybody can as well, I think you said it was January. What suburb?
December.
December, sorry. What suburb was that?
Ellenbrook.
Ellenbrook. Is the reality then, I suppose any risk is too great a risk if lives are on the line, but is it also more so than that, because there is strict protocols surrounding police use of weapons, that there are warnings and the like issued when someone's wielding a weapon of any descriptor? Is it more that it consumes police resources significantly?
No.
I mean, you described the hours of a siege, I mean, and 500...
No.
So it's not that it consumes police resources, even though you gave the figure of 147 call-outs as being wasted time for your tactical response unit.
It's not about resources in terms of time. This is about saving lives.
No one's died, mate.
I, like many other police, have been confronted by officers, by incidents where real weapons are involved. I do not want my officers or any member of the community put in a situation where they have to make a split-second decision and an innocent life is taken.
Here in Australia, the police actually have a much easier job telling the real guns from the gel blasters, because we don't have M4s here. So ask yourself a quick question. Is it a military weapon? The general civilian is not going to have that here in Australia, especially not kids running around the bush.
Because someone is threatening with that. It's not only those with criminal intent, people who have become unwell, they may be mentally unwell, may well be in possession of one of these, and we have situations where people have wanted police to shoot them.
So you're saying a mentally unwell person is going to buy a $200+ gel blaster, wait a week for it to get there, and then go suicide by police. Someone who's at the point of wanting to commit suicide by cop isn't going to have $200 and isn't going to wait a week for a gel blaster to arrive. They'll go to the local Kmart, buy a $5 knife, and go run at a police officer.
So we have to guard against all sorts of difficulties out in the community, and it is totally unreasonable, and now it will be unlawful, for police to have to deal with people who are carrying around what appears in all respects to appear to be a genuine firearm. That is unfair on the community and unfair on any officer confronted with that sort of situation.
Your changes without consultation are unfair on the community.
Whether it's a real firearm, a blaster, or a knife, isn't the person's behaviour the decisive factor for police attending a call out more so than the weapon?
We've got to make critical decisions based on the best information available. And on the information available, if I was confronted with one of these, I would be treating it exactly as it should be, and that is as an authentic, genuine firearm. So if I was, and I expect any of my officers to make the same judgment call, you'd have to treat them all as a loaded weapon that could kill you.
But you still wouldn't shoot first.
You're dealing with a hypothetical. We have to deal with the reality, and the reality it is...
Basing laws on hypotheticals is not how laws should work.
The reality it is that my officers get confronted with these sorts of weapons and real weapons, and of course we have to make tactical decisions. But
You made that decision 147 times in the correct manner.
The prohibition and making it unlawful, exactly what the Minister has announced, will make it safer for everyone involved.
Are there any rules currently in place with the use of these gel blasters in WA?
No, but they will be by 3rd of July.
What do you have to say, Minister? What do you have to say to those people who may have recently brought a gel blaster, some other hobbyists who may have spent thousands of dollars on it? Now you tell them, say, yep, you're going to give them up, and that's it.
Get another hobby. Look, I'm told these things cost about $200 each.
Some of them cost.
Well, bad investment. So, look, it is ultimately
Someone make a meme of that.
about not having our police officers confronting that situation where they arrive and there is a person with a weapon. Just with respect to what you said, police officers don't have to sit there and wait till someone shoots at them before they use their firearms.
Yes, they do. That's how it works in Australia. We're not like America.
If they feel their life is in danger, then they will act, or the lives of people in the community. And as the Commissioner indicated, there are people regularly, it's not an irregular occurrence, who through illness seek to end their lives via police.
So 147 times police have felt threatened for their lives and have not pulled the trigger.
And it would be a tragedy if they can convince somebody to, act because they're carrying one of these things.
Can you just expand on the penalties that people will face from the 3rd of July?
I might get them to hand them out. They're pretty significant.
3 years in jail or up to a $36,000 fine.
$36,000 and 3 years in jail.
Oh, he does say it.
Yeah, but there have been things like, so people, and that is not an irregular occurrence too, people have driven along and shot people on the side of the road with these things. So
How many of those have died? 0.
it has happened quite recently across WA and across the nation. So yes, they're probably charged with those things. They're charged with perhaps threatening somebody with that, like as they would be if they use a replica weapon.
So is that not
No.
enough to take this into account? The threat of public nuisance, threatening behaviour.
So there's already laws in place for those people who are shooting them out the windows of a car.
No, because the threat is higher than that. As I indicated, last year there were 147 call-outs by police in Western Australia to these incidents involving gel blasters. I don't want a police officer to have to confront that situation. It's very simple. I don't believe they should have to.
Well, it's part of their job, unfortunately.
Certainly we should, if we're able to regulate in a fashion that prevents them from having to confront it, then we should. If then someone's doing it illegally and in possession without outside the law, well, we'll deal with them then. But we shouldn't allow it as a loophole that enables people to have them in the community.
So he's basically admitting that criminals don't follow the law and that once they've passed these changes, they still will have to deal with people.
Is there any groups or organisations of particular concern that are taking advantage of these? Equipment, whether that's to modify firearms or...
we are aware that criminal elements are interested in these. They're obviously attractive because they look like a firearm, but because of the ability to have interchangeable componentry and turn it into a firearm, it's even more attractive. So,
again, with the making it a real firearm, please give us an example.
I can't give you a specific organisation.
No, you can't.
Perhaps best for the Commissioner, is there any concern that people who, the gel blasting community groups, are telling us, use this as a recreational activity to, ease anxiety, stress, for PTSD, or some whatever else? Is there any concern that some people might be driven underground and it might actually increase the danger of people, obtaining these things?
I don't have any empirical evidence to suggest that these would be of benefit to people that are otherwise suffering some other illness, nor do I believe that making these unlawful will drive it underground.
Obviously hasn't done his research because there are a lot of people in the gel ball community who are using the sport as a way to deal with anxiety, depression, or even PTSD.
People are in possession of unlicensed real firearms now. The fact that a law is there to prohibit possession of an unlicensed firearm doesn't stop criminals wanting to still possess them. So obviously we see...
So why are you even bothering with the laws if it doesn't stop criminals?
We seize lots of real weapons. What we don't want are the situations that we are regularly being confronted with, where people have been able to buy them from the other part of Australia and then carrying them around. and as you'll see in the footage that we've released, when we've seized these, we've had to apprehend these people under gunpoint, handcuff them, then seize weapons, just like this one here, very similar to that, in which the officers had no idea that it was not a real weapon.
No idea, except people were running around in a public park shooting each other with them for fun.
That's what the unlawful possession of these will prohibit.
They were saying to us this morning as well that there are probably thousands of these in WA. Is that surprising to you? And is that one of the biggest concerns, that you just don't know where they are, how many there are?
In an unregulated market, it's very difficult for me to answer that question because they haven't been regulated, and I presently don't have any accurate estimation of how many. What we are making very, very clear by the Minister's approval, by 3rd of July, if you remain in possession of one of these gel blasters, you will be facing very serious consequences if you're found in possession. So there's ample opportunity for people to actually hand them in, and that will be available.
Ample opportunity, even though South Australia had 6 months and barely 10% got handed in.
We'll be able to bring them to a police station and not be charged, so we'll provide an amnesty in respect of that. Okay, thank you.
Just one thing, South Australia's already done this pretty much. So.
Yeah, so why don't you at least copy us so they can still actually have them, even though they have to register?
No, you had it different though.
Well, slightly different. They've made them
recreational use, and they
Slightly different, yeah, we can actually have them.
Yeah, but you can't actually achieve the requirements they impose on people for serial numbers and the like.
Can't you? I've got 8 downstairs with serial numbers on them.
had quite a serious backlash. There were protests about this. Do you expect the same?
Look, I imagine the people. I've already met with the association or the club that advocates for them, and I've said to them, I told them we were going to do this, but I also said that we'll be amending the Firearms Act, and we'll consult around what that might include.
When do you think you might do that?
Well, we're doing one amendment immediately or in the very near term with respect to a very narrow focus, and then there'll be a second amendment within the next year probably.
I think your whole proposed changes are a narrow focus, mate.
Might just get you to hold the guns again, just to show just how similar they look.
Can I clarify, the 147 police call-outs, was that so far this year or in the past?
That's this year. 2020, sorry, 2020.
2020. Okay.
I probably said, yeah.
Is it in the order of about 3 a week?
You want to come over here, Chris, and we'll come out the front?
3.
I'm just going to stop it here because they just pose for the cameras and get some photos with the 2 blasters side by side. Very sad news for Western Australia. I'd be definitely messaging your politicians, letting them know how you don't want these changes to go ahead. Feel free to leave comments down below of any petitions or anything else that comes from this to help support the Western Australian community. Hopefully you could see how much BS was in this video, and hopefully you can explain some of that to your politicians and get this overturned. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.